Audio Jungle.
Welcome everybody to the next episode of the Sonar PC Podcast with Rob Adamus here on YouTube and www.sonarpcpodcast.com, my website. I'm going to start off today's episode. First of all, thank you to all of the new subscribers and also, of course, always the loyal followers. There's been quite an uptick in the subscribers with what's been going on here. And what I wanted to do, I'm going to give a little bit of an update because so many things have happened just in the last few days based upon some of the episodes that I've done recently that I think I needed to do a few quick updates on those. Number one is screw YouTube and Facebook. You took down my Shadowgate documentary that I uploaded 2 weeks ago that was put out initially by Millie Weaver and the people who created ShadowNet, the spy network. And they spoke of that, and it was up for about a day and a half, and YouTube took it down for hate speech, where there was no such thing on that, and gave me a strike. And I appealed that, and of course, interestingly enough, I called YouTube in order to get that strike taken away, and they hung up on me. So there you go. That explains the leftist behavior of social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all satanic worshiping social media platforms that try and annihilate conservative, Christian, Jewish, centered views. Well, apparently you can behead people like ISIS and normalize pedophilia in videos, and that can stay because that doesn't violate community standards. But apparently truthful news is against their policy. So I just want to say screw you to them, okay? That's to start the show. Second thing, my episode 35 was called The Cucking Demise of Pro Sports, and I need to update this because I'm so disgusted as a former 20-year hockey player. NBA is done. I talked about that. NHL is done because they now want to turn the blue lines into black lines. Major League Baseball, NFL coming up shortly will of course see their demise as well, and pro soccer. All pro sports, and I've got to say this really hurts me, but at this point, even as a former player, I know that there's so many of us who are disgusted, and there are a lot of current players disgusted with what's going on, that pro sports has cucked itself to the Chinese Communist Party and Marxist, Communist, Nazi, Black Lives Matter, and Antifa for situations like Jacob Blake, who is a convicted criminal for sexual assault, rape, and so on, and the Kenosha, Wisconsin protests, where the entire city is up in flames, and mainstream fake news media is portraying it as peaceful protests, are shooting people in the streets. That's okay. But a young 17-year-old by the name of Kyle Rittenhouse, who was there as a medic. And this young man volunteers his time to do things like scrub graffiti off of walls and all these things. He's just a wonderful young man. Defended himself from shots being fired at him. And he ended up shooting somebody who was shooting at him. Well, now they want to put him on trial for first-degree murder. This is what is happening all throughout North America. Tyrannical governments in counties, cities, states, provinces, countries. And individuals like President Trump is fighting against that. I'm fighting against it. I know a lot of you are too. And we have to up the fight against this. And thank God that there's a law firm who's come forth to fight for Kyle Rittenhouse, because GoFundMe took down his fund immediately for donations. But again, you can be an ISIS member, you can be a pedophile, GoFundMe will allow you to have donations for you. Well, we're just going to expose us more and more. So anyway, that's a kind of preface a little bit here. And what I wanted to do with those few items was also make a point that the whole premise of today's show is going to be about talking about a civil war. And the vast majority of people in Canada haven't got a clue what that is because we've never officially had one. We've had a rebellion. But realistically, that's pretty much the same as a civil war. So I'm going to kind of put some pieces of information together here in order to explain really what we're in right now. So I'm going to be going back and forth with a lot of stuff here. So here's some points in what a civil war is going on down in the States and what's going on in Canada. Okay? Antifa murders a Patriot Prayer member in Portland this weekend by the name of Jay Bishop, who was just there praying in among the protests that were going on in Portland. And Portland has been going on for months, violence by the demon rat-led mayor in that pathetic state. And so what did Antifa and Black Lives Matter people do? They cheered and danced over his death in the street. He was unarmed. So my heart and my prayers go out to Jay Bishop's family over that. God. I tell you, I mean, I get more and more frustrated with this every single day. And as a guy who jokes around a lot, this is very frustrating for me to put out news like this. But I feel like I have no choice because we have to have a voice through something like this show, through social media, all the ways that we have available to us. In my view, we're God's soldiers fighting a spiritual war. And we're in battle. That's what this is all about. So, anyway, another update on the COVID scamdemic hoax. Well, as of today, and I've been telling people this for a long time, that was a test run. And today, officially, we've gone from Dr. Fauci, and again, I put that out there, that's my term for Fauci, because he's really a fake doctor, and he's Bill Gates' globalist puppet, paid for. The actual numbers now went from his original 2.2 million were going to die in just the US from this virus is now under 10,000. And those numbers I can guarantee are skewed. So the actual number of categorized, because people who have been shot in the head, have been in car and bike crashes, have been categorized as COVID deaths. Okay, but the audits are showing that's not the case. The actual percentage now is 0.0004% died from COVID. Okay, that's less than 3 people a day. When tuberculosis and cancer kills over 2,000 people per day, and we don't shut down society, explain to me why people are walking around with masks. Speaking of which, I was in Costco and Walmart today, and I refused the masks and walked right in. Apparently it's mandatory there. Not on my watch. So they didn't bother me. So why are over 90% of the people walking around like sheeple with those things on that actually will make you sick, with the CO2 not being released out of your system, going right back into your system? You tell me. Anyway, this weekend, the RNC, the Republican National Committee, had their official nomination of President Trump for the Republican Party. As much as the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, had theirs, and there was such a wide difference between the two. When you have creepy, dementia, pedophile, hair-sniffing Joe Biden, not able to answer any question other than with lies, and he can't even finish a sentence without bumbling his way through. And then you had President Trump with one of the most grandest speeches that I personally heard in a long, long time. Come out with truth, because in my view, truth is self-evident. And in God's Bible, it says the truth will set you free. I follow that philosophy for a reason. And we're seeing the huge difference between the liars and evil in this world versus good. and truth in this world coming out and being exposed. Democrats, as I call them, the demon rats, the liberals, the libtards, you know, we can go into specifics around political parties and say that there's bad people within each, and I will agree with that. However, President Trump is not one of those. Justin Trudeau certainly is one of those terrible people. Pedo-globalist puppet controlled by George Soros. We know that name very, very well. It's amazing as you do research for these subjects, and it's spoken of on social media, and you see the people who are just screaming at the top of their lungs against President Trump, and those people are only because of the fact they're the unawakened sheeple, and they're controlled by, typically up in Canada, the CBC, CTV, and Global. Down in the States, well, you know, I mean, we got the CNNs of the world. We're my cousin. And you know what? I haven't stated my cousin's name because he's a disgrace to our family, but I'm going to say it now in this episode. Anderson Cooper is my cousin. He's a CIA asset. He's a globalist puppet. He's a pathological liar. He's not a journalist, okay? He reads a teleprompter. I don't. This is me. This is Rob, okay? You don't see me looking at some kind of teleprompter. This is just me being real. I've got some notes here that I look back and forth on, okay? It's good to actually get that out about Anderson because he's a puke. He's a disgrace to this family. So, anybody wants to call me on my show or get a hold of me on social media, please do. We'll go into lots of detail about that stuff. So anyway, in regards to Justin Trudeau, as I like to call him, always absent, right? 50 plus days not in the House of Commons, and interesting how you can get paid for not working and then give yourself a raise. Well, interestingly, of course, this past week, Bill Morneau, the finance minister resigned. All well and good, except I'm going to let people know. It's not going to really make a whole lot of difference because of the fact that Gerald Butts resigned back when, remember? And all of a sudden he was still there in the background. I expect Bill Morneau to be exactly the same because these people never really go away. Okay? So, in all of that, we're going to fight an uphill battle, but that's okay. Within a war, I always state this in person to people and in shows like this, that in a war, you lose a few battles along the way, but you ultimately win the war. And as God's soldiers, we have to fight. We have to go on the offense. So that's what we have to do. And interestingly, the Democrats, of course, have been going on television and everywhere they can go for an entire year now, trying to normalize the fact that they are going to conduct a military coup against President Trump, whether he wins the election in November or not. So they're trying to desensitize people to this. Interesting note came out today. The highest ranking general in the U.S. military, General Milley, came out and said something that is very good news. And that is, in the past year, the Democrats, meaning melt-faced Pelosi, among others, were meeting with him, trying to get him to get on board with other treasonous former military people and current ones. A lot of them are all CIA operatives, in order to conduct a military coup against President Trump, no matter what happens in the November coming election. So in essence, what they've been saying is they know they're going to lose that election. And one of two things is really kind of their option in this, because the Russian hoax didn't work, the Ukrainian hoax didn't work, the impeachment hoax didn't work, and the scamdemic hoax is not working. So they're in desperation mode. So here's what they're going to do. George Soros is doing everything possible to rig that election, and much as he tried to in 2016, and much in the same way he rigged the Canadian 2015 and 2019 elections. So here's what's going to happen. President Trump is going to win in a landslide, even though there are at least possibly 11 to 80 million fake mail-in ballots out there. I mean, you can come up with a number because whatever your number is probably close or not close. So he's still going to win. And so they're going to they're going to try a military coup, or they are going to secede and create their own country and institute their own president. Well, in that case, that would be Dementia Joe, pedophile Biden, with his get on my knees and I'll pretty much, you know what, Kamala Harris, who was a prostitute at one time, and still is in the political world. So really what they're saying is they're going to institute Hillary Clinton as their leader and her cabal. Wow. That's quite a thing. Okay. So that said, that's going to be quite the thing leading up to November and how that's all going to come about. And I have a lot of faith in what I would call the silent majority and the military, who loves President Trump because he loves them, in law enforcement because he loves them and they love him, and the citizens militia, because I did a show just over a year ago in the de-weaponization of Canada to become the next Venezuela. And that was one of the most watched shows. And what I'm seeing, again, down in the States, because they are always more awakened to this than Canadians are. And I'm certainly hopeful that we are doing our part, which we need to up our games for, to continue talking to people en masse, one-on-one, so on, keep providing them facts. And we know we're not going to change everybody with reality, but we still have to try. So the amount of weapons, meaning guns, the purchase of them down in the States has gone up 72% just in the last month. Over 5 million Americans who've never purchased a gun before are now doing so because they see what's going on, that the Democrats don't give a damn about them. They care about the criminals because they're using Black Lives Matter and Antifa, among others. George Soros and Alexander Soros paid for groups in order to create violence and kill people. Well, Canadians need to step up to the plate and start doing exactly the same thing, because civil war is here. Now, I know most Canadians don't get that, and they don't know what civil war is, but let me outline what the definition of a civil war is, and it's kind of a misnomer of a word because civil war is never civil, okay? It's quite violent, all right? So let's outline what we're in and what we need to do about it. See, now the scamdemic hoax was kind of the final attempt to bring an economic collapse, which we're seeing in its own form, and they're still working on that, because if you can bankrupt a country, you take away people's opportunity to do a number of things. And we know how many businesses have gone defunct, how many people have lost their jobs, and in Canada it's more so than the States. The States at least is having a bit of a turnaround, okay? Not up here. Because we know Justin Trudeau has no desire whatsoever to help this country. He hates this country. Okay, we've gone from a $60 billion surplus to over a $350 billion deficit in 4 years. Unheard of. Okay? So, but, and I say the word but because Canadians are allowing it to happen. So, are you the sheeple that are willing to walk off a cliff? Or are you going to be part of we patriots who are doing something in order to take back our country? Because a country is supposed to be governed by its citizens, not the employees that are put into Ottawa or into Washington, D.C. Okay? So, let me just kind of help define what a civil war is in its definition. It's also known as an intrastate war. Polymology, a war between organized groups within the same state or country, and the aim of one side may be to take control of the country or a region to achieve independence for a region or to change government policies. So in other words, down in the States, President Trump is a non-globalist. He's fighting the globalist establishment. Very hard for one man to do that, of course. but he's doing a lot against them. In Canada, with Justin Trudeau, he is a globalist puppet who wants nothing to do to help this country. So, now, the Civil War up here, a lot of this was outlined in the white papers of the CFR, and the CFR stands for the Council for Foreign Relations, one of the globalist front organizations. And much like the Trilateral Commission, the UN, Bilderberg Group, Skull and Bones Secret Society, Illuminati, you can go through the plethora of those. The name that I mentioned earlier, which a lot of you know, George Soros, Nazi Satanist, he's in the middle of this always. And his favorite group right now is Black Lives Matter. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown here of the civil war that they're inciting and who Black Lives Matter really is and who pro sports is supporting. Now, the three so-called leaders of Black Lives Matter are Patrisse Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opal Tometi. Now, they formed this in 2013, but they didn't really form it. That was, that was Soros. Who are they? Well, they're lesbians of the black chapter of the Skull and Bones Secret Society. Okay? That's just who they are. Okay? It's not I'm making this up. That's who they are. So I described who they are. So, now what causes a civil war? Well, really one answer only in that, and that's globalists fund both sides of civil unrest. So when they feel they don't have full control of the citizens, which they don't right now, and because it's good business. Okay, they did that with the war, World War II. They funded both sides. This ensures continued control of the people without the citizens being aware they're simply useless pawns in a Satan-worshipping based ideology. Okay? So you have people running around screaming at the top of their lungs, Black Lives Matter. Well, you know what? All lives matter. All lives matter. Okay? And if somebody doesn't get that, well, then they're the uneducated, ignorant, non-brain functioning individuals that they show themselves to be. And that's really too bad. So, there are a few countries, that are fighting this, and obviously President Trump is doing so down in the States. I wish we had that in Canada, and certainly I would be one of those people, but I have to do it in another respect, along with others here. So this show is really just one to outline that we are in a civil war. And again, the premise of the show has always been, as you guys know, and for everyone who's new to this show, it's do your own research. I'm going to give you some foundational stuff to these subjects that we talk about. And then my hope is that you take that and you run with it. Now, of course, you've got to go to the right places in order to get the right information, and alternative news, as we're called, is a place to do so. Now, I'm going to outline, of course, a lot of links in this show, as I do with other ones, in order to follow up and give you more details of what I've put forth here today. I just want to quickly go back to the whole Justin Trudeau thing, especially with the weed charity, because more and more information is coming out, of course, all the time, in the fact that his mother was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for appearance fees by the weed charity, along with his brother, who was paid $67,000 for talent fees. That little garden gnome has no talent, so how do you get paid for talent fees when you have no talent? Okay? Conflict of interest. Just like Bill Morneau's daughter was working there, and so on. Almost $912 million of our money went offshore. So this is the stuff that's going on. So I'm imploring you guys to continue to do your research, continue to get awakened, continue to become knowledgeable. So when you talk to people, you talk in fact. And the facts are out there, more and more so every day. So before I kind of shut this show down, I wanted to make a comment about something that is so disturbing to me, and a lot of us already know this stuff. With the exposure of everything that's going on within this civil war, something that never gets talked about in mainstream media is what an amazing job President Trump has given his law enforcement agencies on all levels in order to combat child sex trafficking and the pedophile rings, not only in the States but around the world. And his administration has done more than all administrations in U.S. history combined, and you never hear that. And knowing full well on a personal note that there could have been a real serious issue in regards to that with someone within my own family had that person not been aware of what was about to happen. I really can't go into more detail with it. I'm just thankful and praise God that it didn't get to that point. Because individuals like the Clinton Foundation, John and Tony Podesta, the whole Pizzagate situation, among others, the situation in Haiti with all these children, millions of them missing and so on, and what's happened there. This is a personal thing for me and something that I fight every single day in ways that I can personally do with others. So besides all the usual with the fighting of the vaccinations, which we don't need, all that good stuff, I want to say thank you for all the new subscribers again and all for the loyal followers. If you haven't hit like and subscribe to the show, please do. You know, sharing all of this is all about you. It's not about me. I'm just the host of all this stuff here, and I do so for you guys. So as I like to end every show, I want to say to all you guys, I have faith in you. I'm proud of you who are doing what you do in your own ways here. And may God be with you and your family in all things. And good night.